Today's show is sponsored by Lightstep Incident Response, built on the ServiceNow platform used by over 6,000 companies worldwide. Lightstep Incident Response allows you to scale your incident response team without adding to your monthly bill. With intelligent on-call scheduling and escalations, you get the full context of your service health. Lightstep Incident Response immediately pinpoints issues and uses machine learning to send group text, reducing your time to respond. And you can seamlessly orchestrate alert and incident triage with on-call scheduling across Slack, Teams, Zoom, desktop, and mobile. So get started today with a free 30-day trial of Lightstep Incident Response by visiting lightstep.com/cloudcast. That's lightstep.com/cloudcast. And get a free t-shirt after your first alert or incident.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And as I hit record on this, we've just passed July 4th, Independence Day here in the United States. And if I sound a little under the weather, I'm just going to get this out of the way right up front. I am recovering from COVID. That is how I spent my Independence Day, unfortunately. So if I cough, I will try to edit it out. I can't promise I'm going to get all of the coughs in the editing process, but hopefully this won't be too bad, and we're going to jump right into Cloud News of the Week. For our first article, and this is something actually I'm slightly surprised hasn't happened sooner, the Register is reporting that Microsoft Azure, the public cloud, is now having problems with capacity, and it's related to chip shortages. We're seeing this throughout our entire industry. And we know, of course, the hyperscalers, they're always building out data centers. They're always adding more capacity. That's the kind of the whole point of it. It's everything on demand. But Azure, it's the first time I've seen this number in a while, over 200 data centers globally across 60 different regions. And of them, about 10%, about 24 data centers with limited capacity. And when they say limited capacity, what that means is they're actually starting to do some restrictions, like maybe restricting trials or onboarding of new customers or new services. And they actually anticipate that unofficially, to be clear, to continue probably until early next year. So the chip industry shortage is continuing. We're starting to see it more and more, and it is to the point it's even hitting the big clouds as well. For our second article, is all about IBM and mainframes. And we don't talk about mainframes very much on the show, but it is something that they're always there. They're always still making a lot of money, still in the billions. And good old ZOS, which is the operating system that powers the mainframes, it just continues chugging right along. And because of that, IBM has announced a general availability of mainframe as a service, or mainframe in the public cloud. Now, it's extremely restricted. You can't just sign up and get ZOS. You have to be an existing client, then also go through an approval process. And then once you're allowed in, it is for basically non-production capabilities. It's for development, and development of applications mainly was the focus for it. And if you think about it and step back, that actually is a really good idea. It's a good fit for it. Because those mainframe apps, you want to develop them somewhere, then you want to put it somewhere probably on your big iron to own and operate that for years and years and years, because that's what you do on a mainframe. But it was interesting to see that even with mainframes. And so it's in conclusion, sorry, I had a bit of a coughing fit, had to do an edit there. In conclusion, not surprising here, probably a good fit, and public cloud has even come to mainframes. For our third and final article today, this is actually something that's been going on for a while, but the VC firms, a lot of the big ones, have actually been renouncing VC status quietly and going with something else. And so this idea here, it started with, I want to say Andreessen Horowitz was first, and maybe Sequoia was second. But Bessemer was the most recent as well. And the idea is to not be a VC anymore, but be a registered investment advisor. And that's an official designation with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. When you have that designation, you can then run a hedge fund, but then also have other assets in it as well. So this is where you get to take public equities, cryptocurrency, secondary shares, things like that. And so it opens the door for more investments. And this is also probably one of those things. A lot of the VCs are still chasing after the crypto money. And so this is a way to expand that reach even further. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. Coming up right after the break, we have Bryan Woodworth, and we're going to be talking about secure cloud migrations.
Today's show is sponsored by CloudZero. For software-driven companies focused on growing margins, CloudZero is the only cloud cost intelligence platform that puts engineering in control by connecting technical decisions to business results. By analyzing cloud services like AWS and Snowflake, CloudZero provides real-time cost insights that help you maximize margins. Engineering teams can answer critical questions like, who are my most expensive customers? How much does this specific feature cost our business? What's the cost impact of re-architecting this application? With cost anomaly alerts via Slack, product-specific data views, and granular engineering context that makes it easy to investigate any cost, CloudZero is your complete cloud cost intelligence platform, connecting the dots between high-level trends and individual line items. Join companies like Drift, Rapid7, and SeatGeek by visiting cloudzero.com/cloudcast to get started today. That's cloudzero.com/cloudcast. Today's sponsor is Datadog, a real-time monitoring platform that unifies metrics, logs, and distributed traces from your cloud containers and orchestration software. Datadog's container-centric monitoring features allow you to track the health and performance of your dynamic container environment. The container map provides a bird's-eye view of your container fleet, and the live container view searches, groups, and filters your containers with any criteria, like tags, pods, or workspaces. To start monitoring your container clusters, sign up for a free trial today, and Datadog will send you a free t-shirt. Visit datadog.com/container-cloudcast to get started. That's datadog.com/container-cloudcast. And we're back. And, folks, about every quarter, Aaron and I jump on here and we talk about how much the public cloud is growing. And we talk about, the numbers and the figures for the quarter for an Amazon or an Azure or Google. And, you can have all sorts of opinions on those businesses, and you can have all sorts of sort of takes on whether things are growing quickly or not. But at the end of the day, the thing that you kind of can't dispute is more and more people are using the cloud. And the reality is a lot of those people that are using the cloud are starting somewhere that's not cloud. And what that ultimately means is there's going to be, or there has been, and there's going to be a lot of applications that end up getting either directly migrated into the cloud or modernized and eventually get into the cloud one way or the other. And one of the realities is that stuff doesn't happen by itself, right? There's a whole set of processes that has to happen. There's technology that has to be underneath it. And so what we thought we'd try and do today is dig a little bit into what cloud migrations look like. How do we do that securely? What are the things that have to happen in the network? And no better person to help us do that today than Bryan Woodworth, who is Solution Strategist at Aviatrix. Bryan, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
We were talking a bunch before we clicked the tape recorder, and you and I have a few things in common. We both sort of have a little bit of a networking background, and we both have spent some time in the North Carolina mountains, which is this time of year incredibly beautiful. Give folks a little bit of sense of both your background prior to Aviatrix and then what you focus on today.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So long story short, I kind of cut my networking teeth and really got seriously involved in networking after graduate school. I'm kind of an interesting creature. I have a whole previous life as a professor. I taught history of rock and roll and popular music studies at UT Austin.
Nice.
As a graduate student.
You're Jack Black, your School of Rock.
Yeah, I did that. It was a great gig. But as I was in that program, I just found myself more and more immersed in the computer lab and technology. And one thing led to another. I moved to Seattle to support my wife. She's from there, and she wanted to finish her doctorate program in PT at University of Washington. So through mutual friends, I ended up at F5 Networks with just a little networking experience, and really went through a tremendous learning curve there for about 8 years.
That's great.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a great company, still a very good company. I learned a lot about networking, kind of from the top down, application down to the bottom of the stack, because F5 is very involved in the application, as some folks know.
Right.
So that was kind of an interesting way to get into networking from the app down. But then through both my role as a sales engineer and sales engineering manager of major accounts at F5, ended up working a lot with Microsoft and transitioned over there back in, I think, 2013, 2014. And there, my first gig at Microsoft was to be the principal architect for load balancing for all their data centers. And I did that on the infrastructure side for 2 years. So a lot of experience with large-scale, hyperscale deployment, global data center networking, global application delivery, traffic steering, failover paradigms, those things that load balancing people do. And then finally, working at Azure, changing over back to my sales DNA to be what they call a global black belt, which is kind of a top-level sales expert. And of course, I was involved in networking and network security there. And finally, I did that for 7 years, and finally have been now at Aviatrix since December of last year, 2021.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, no, the couple of things that the black belt program over at Microsoft is world renowned. I've had a chance to work with a number of them, both directly, and then a few of them actually migrated over to my previous job at Red Hat. So yeah, really impressive group. It was always a little unusual when they would say, "Hey, I'm on the sales side of things," because yes, they are on the side where they're interacting with customers, but boy, just unbelievably smart technical people, and really broad set of knowledge, and people that at the end of the day we're very, very interested and concerned with sort of customers' best interests. So having that background is fantastic. I was telling you before. Your CTO over at Aviatrix, Sherry Way, is a woman who I used to work with directly when I was at Cisco. She was the lead engineer when we were working on what was really, really early voice over IP technology, and probably one of the 3 or 4 best engineers I ever worked with when I was there. So you guys are in good hands if Sherry is leading things for you.
Yeah, that's a cool coincidence insofar as the first person I met that really introduced me to the product and the solution, the company, was Sherry. It was during a partnership call with the Azure Black Belts. Yeah. And she was talking about the mission and charter of the company and the capability. And at that time, it was mostly involved in AWS, but leaning into other clouds. And we were pretty impressed, kind of blown away eventually with what Aviatrix was going to do. Yeah. So that piqued my interest a lot, which eventually then, of course, led to me transitioning over there in my current role.
Very cool. Very cool. So Aviatrix is sort of right in the middle of, the technology needed to help companies migrate to the cloud and run sort of multi-cloud environments. You get a chance to talk to a lot of companies that are doing this. They're either beginning it, they're in the middle of it, they're living with it. In 2022, kind of give me a sense of what does a cloud migration look like for a customer? What are they, what do they have to consider? What are the common mistakes they make? Sort of, what's the state of cloud migrations, if you will, from where you interact with different companies these days?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. We could talk about that at length, but I'll compress it, for the purpose of this podcast and this conversation. So broadly speaking, we have 3 types of customers in cloud, right? Cloud is not new anymore. There's a huge focus on cloud. In fact, Gartner believes one of the recent data points by them says that cloud workloads are almost going to double in the next 3 years in terms of migration. So today we're about 40% according to them. And over the next 3 years, we're going to rise to 70% of workloads migrated to cloud. So the next 3 years are going to be super busy, super critical times. So cloud is on the rise. This work is ongoing. So we really have 3 types of customers here. We have customers that are still new to cloud, and that's fine and that's fair because, again, there's still a lot of workloads that haven't moved and a lot of work that needs to be done. These are your folks that are just now getting their ducks in a row and experiencing cloud for the first time and trying to educate their folks on what cloud means and so forth. Then we have other customers that maybe have created one or two migration projects, and they've gotten their feet wet and they're hungry for more. So they're kind of in the middle. They've gotten over that initial learning curve, and they've been through kind of the grinder on some of the challenges and are starting to figure out how to do this thing. And then finally, we have the cloud experts. These tend to be a minority, but they also tend to be kind of larger, more complex, proficient shops that have more resources and more capability to train and educate and get involved in cloud and cloud ops. And these customers have been in cloud now for 3 or 4 years. They've moved a lot of the workloads of consequence, and they have, they've got the battle scars, but also the trophies to show for their efforts here. So that's the continuum. For today's discussion, we should probably focus on the first two types of customers, which are the ones that are new and the ones that are just recently experienced, because therein lies most of the opportunity for them to improve, and also still a lot of the same kind of mistakes and errors that are being made.
Yeah, no, I like that. It keeps us sort of bounded, and for a lot of people, like you said, if there's opportunities to improve, this is a good time to be digging into that. Who, lots of roles in IT have evolved. Teams have evolved. DevOps is a thing, and SRE is a thing, and we've got a lot of sort of combined teams. Who do you find is sort of driving the migrations within an organization? Is it application centric? Is it infrastructure centric? Does it tend to come top down or bottom up? Like, paint me a picture of who's making the decisions. What are their expectations? Do they tend to, expect things to happen faster than they should? Do they expect what the cloud provider does? Kind of give me a sense of who's doing this and what are their expectations look like?
Right. Yeah. Keeping that context on those first two groups of customers, a lot of the momentum to cloud does come from a part of that organization that shares some common DNA. They are all interested in business innovation, digital transformation, cloud readiness. They tend to be line of business owners, application owners, the folks that are driving what we call the workloads of consequence, either internal applications which are critical to business function, or externally facing applications critical to brand and marketplace success and so forth. So these teams usually share some kind of common terms in the name, and they'll often be referred to as digital business development, digital innovation, cloud readiness, et cetera. But they all kind of have the same charter, which is to identify those workloads from a brownfield perspective. And brownfield, by that, I mean workloads that were not born in the cloud, that were born in on-prem or maybe in a private cloud like VMware, that now need to be moved and refactored for cloud. To identify which one of these is going to bear the most return on investment as they refactor it, so that they can gain the ability of the cloud's super services in terms of machine learning, AI, database at scale, all these things that allow them to become more competitive, more viable, faster in today's marketplace. They are definitely leading the charge. It is not super common to see that happen under the office of the CISO. This is not always true, but usually IT and under CISO, cybersecurity are super busy people. They've got a bunch of things to deal with. They have on-prem to deal with. They have, some of them, a lot of branches or edge locations to deal with, and now they have cloud to deal with. So they typically are not the people that are coming up and saying, please give us more work. They are kind of trying to catch their breath with this big push to cloud, because they were already very busy to begin with.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense. I'm curious, in the sense of security, one of the topics that we've covered recently, and I consistently hear over and over again, is, you've got a security mindset, you've got a security kind of posture that you tend to do on premises, and it's evolved for various reasons. It could be, zero trust. It could be, just, how you do security. It could be driven by the industry. A lot of things happen on premises for various reasons. As you go to the public cloud, do you find that companies tend to just try and take the exact same approach, or do they start to go, oh, well, the cloud just does certain things securely for me? There seems to be kind of a, who's got responsibility thing. How do you find that happens, with migrations? Because there's a certain kind of mix, right? Some stuff, it's an application that probably lived on premises, but now it's going to the cloud. Like, how do you see that dynamic kind of working out?
Oh boy. Well, yeah, that's part and parcel of a whole larger discussion, but so to unpack that means we also need to unpack some related things. There's a lot of intertwined variables, but trying to kind of take it in linear function. Amongst the digital innovation teams and business owner, application owner teams, this is a bit of a stereotype, but there is definitely more of that zeitgeist that cloud needs to be as a service. The reason I'm moving to cloud is to become more agile, to embrace infrastructure and application as code, CI/CD pipeline. I need speed. I need agility. I need instant scale, which is, again, one of the promises of cloud. They tend to be a little unaware, or just it's not their domain. It's not their bailiwick to pay attention to cloud infrastructure. That's just something that their application needs to live and breathe. And they just kind of push that down or delegate that to IT and say, here's this big project. Here's this big app that's going to move. We're going to refactor it in such a way. And now here you go. You figure out that networking and the security. And so that's where we hit a lot of headwinds and a lot of challenges, is because, to your point, a lot of networking, IT, and security teams are not heavily skilled or focused on cloud ops. They're, again, very busy. They do understand DevOps, cloud ops being a furthering of that, and a deepening of that, maybe a topic for another conversation.
Sure.
So they then are chartered with this requirement to make this app work and secure, and it's kind of in backwards function. So what I see happening a lot is the application people tilt in first. There's a lot of planning around what the application should look like and the kind of PASI services it should consume. Networking and IT professionals get involved in this, not like retroactively, but kind of like just as a second wave of people to come in and make this work. They actually peel apart the covers, as cybersecurity does, and they look at how these PaaS offerings work, or how these applications are supposed to talk. And they look at the way these CSPs design these things, and they shake their heads and say, no, this isn't going to work. We have compliance goals. We're moving this application. We're refactoring it, but it needs to be compliant the same way it was compliant on-prem.
Right.
So what do I do for this? It's now moving to this as a service thing. It has access to the internet that it never used to. It's speaking to a public control plane that it never used to. I have to have it all in a firewall. How do I put it in a firewall? And this leads to a tremendous amount of complication.
Yeah, no, that's always when you hit the point where it's like, cool. It's all new stuff. It's going to be faster. Maybe it's going to be cheaper, or it's going to be whatever. And then they go, yeah, compliance doesn't have any leeway, right? Like it's like a binary checkbox of it either needs to be compliant or it's not compliant. And that's when, I find that a lot of stuff that, sort of the best laid plans at that point now become, okay, what do we have to do? So it's interesting that you highlight that. I've heard that over and over again. Another thing that I find when people try and get to the cloud is, there's often this, especially if you're doing migrations, or, you're thinking about, say, multiple clouds for whatever reason, you start saying things like, well, it would be great, or, we want to be cloud agnostic, sometimes you'll say. And what that often leads to is this conversation of, if we could have the same type of technology in multiple places, that would make our life a lot easier, right? Like, I wouldn't have to learn AWS is different than Azure, or, the way we do VPNs is different. How do you find, especially from a networking perspective, little nuances can make a big difference, as we both know. How do you find people manage through the nuances between how they do networking on-prem to how they do networking in AWS versus Azure? And like, are they able to hide some of those things such that they look consistent? Or is this just, you're going to have to figure out that this one's different, the terminology is different, the defaults are different? How do networking people sort of adapt to things?
It's very much trial by fire, really. Again, as I mentioned earlier, IT folks are busy. They don't have a lot of time to be pulled off the line to do new skilling in a cloud or new training or cloud readiness. And when that happens, it's not always complete, or it's piecemeal, or it's an abbreviated kind of version. And this is compounded by multi-cloud. It's hard enough for an IT professional to take time out of his or her day and her work schedule to be comfortable with one cloud's security or networking ecosystem, much less 3 or 4. So what ends up happening is that they end up importing for a migration project. Greenfield is a totally other topic, a totally other kind of a thing that is a different kind of motion, because the migration piece is very different. But focusing again on brownfield, moving workloads of consequence on-prem and part or whole to cloud, they end up bringing with them, of course, those skills and ecosystems or platforms that they know and love best. They don't have time to figure out always these differences between the cloud networking capabilities and the traditional, say, next generation firewall capabilities. So what they end up doing, understandably, is deploying a lot of marketplace kit into the cloud. And this is sometimes not just because of a skill gap. It's also because when they learn, they finally take the time, these new cloud stacks or capabilities, they learn that against their existing compliant goals, there's challenges, there's deficiencies, there's feature gaps. And in order to try to make amends and get this application to move, because there's tremendous pressure to get these apps to move. Speed is the key. They do end up putting a lot of security inside of traditional firewall systems, which presents both a blessing and a curse insofar as they're skilled in this product. It's a traditional firewall they use on-prem. They have same. But this product doesn't understand cloud in the same way it understands on-prem. It doesn't know always about cloud-native constructs like tags. It's looking for wires. Its way of thinking is still based on switching and interfaces. So when it comes to creating what we call a virtual air gap, it's all done in cloud by routing. Layer 2 constructs, switching and VLAN are obfuscated in these virtual platforms, in these cloud software-defined networking stacks, right? Those are underlay concepts that the CSPs reserve for themselves. Customers don't get insight into that. So when you start creating good security policy and posture in cloud, the first exhibit is good, tight route control. They realize this quickly. This causes a lot of heartburn. And so what we end up doing is seeing one of two things in that initial, I'm just new to cloud, this is my first migration experience as an IT professional. We see a lot of DIY. Customers and IT people saying, okay, I've got to create a world of firewalls and connect them all, because these firewalls are how I'm going to accomplish all my goals quickly without the skill set and feature gap. But now the firewalls have to be routers, because it's all about routes. There are no VLANs anymore. There are no interfaces. The air gapping is totally different. If you don't route correctly and nail up your routes to your firewall correctly, traffic leaks around the firewall. It's a disaster. But firewalls aren't really good routers. And the people that maintain them and build them and have spent their careers on them aren't really good at routing, because that's networking. So sometimes the networking people try, and they do it with routers, and they do it with SD-WAN overlays, or they do it with GRE or IPsec overlays. But again, these routers don't understand cloud native concepts. What's in their routing brain has no real synchronization or awareness of what's happening in the cloud routing stack. It's two paradigms, and routers don't make good firewalls. So that might solve the routing piece, but now how do you implement good security in a router? That is where the industry is, to be just completely honest. And it's damned if you do and damned if you don't here.
Yeah, it is an interesting, if you've lived in different parts of the stack, you start to realize this stuff. Like I tell folks all the time, yes, there are a lot of constructs in, a layer 4 through 7 device, but they're not necessarily, great at doing layer 3 stuff. Yes, Linux has a lot of constructs, and you could do BGP in it, but that doesn't mean that Linux people necessarily understand what any of that stuff means. And so when you just kind of force those things on top of them to go, well, you're now responsible for it. It's very much the equivalent of, I dropped you into a foreign country. You have no idea what the language is. Good luck. Good luck finding your way around things. And it's a legitimate problem. It's an interesting challenge, because we're always trying to mash technologies together, because we think, well, okay, if this group and this group work together, or these things are under one umbrella, they'll work better. But learning and change and stuff takes time. And I think you highlighted that very, very well, especially in the cloud. It doesn't work exactly the same, right? The end result may look the same, but it doesn't look the same. Long rant aside, give me a sense, so we sort of highlighted some security challenges. We've highlighted some organizational challenges, some networking challenges. Where does Aviatrix fit in this big picture, and kind of what parts of these problems do you guys help solve?
Sure. So Aviatrix takes a really unique approach here with all of this background that we've just gone over, being very part and parcel of Aviatrix's awareness of what's happening in industry, the pain points, the solutions that customers need, right? So in this context that we've talked about and the state of the union that we've talked about, Aviatrix comes in with a very unique, special kind of solution. We approach cloud networking with a platform that we call Secure Cloud Networking. And there's a couple of components to this. The first is that we strive for, and we put a lot of work and time into cloud native integration. So we have a control plane, meaning we have a controller, which is kind of the deep brain of the product. It's a virtual machine that you deploy from the marketplace, but it's very simple to use. You just deploy one of them, and then the controller will contact all of the different cloud service provider fabrics that you point it to, speak their language and speak their API. And then through the controller, you can deploy your data plane, which is, the orchestration of encrypted gateways that is embedded in each of the fabrics of the clouds. So this cloud native integration also yields some really nice outcomes. You have abstraction so that you speak a common language to the controller, you express intent to it, and it shows you common standard things back, consistent networking architecture back, consistent control and visibility back. It also gives you what we call the enterprise service experience, meaning a Goldilocks zone where, yes, you have a cloud native network. Yes, you are operating with the scale and the agility of cloud ops, but you are not dealing with kind of the black box of some of the cloud PaaS and SaaS things. You are getting instant feedback. It's your network. You own it end to end. And you are able to troubleshoot it and manage it very effectively because you have full transparency into what your data plane is doing and all of the traffic moving within kind of in real time. So another important component of secure cloud networking is that we embed the security into the data plane in the same ways, in a similar way, that the cloud fabrics do themselves. Because as it turns out, that the best approach to firewalling in cloud isn't to firewall at all. It's the network itself, right? And this is how we break that conundrum of firewalls are not good routers and routers are not good firewalls. You kind of have to let go of that and go into an approach that is more, I need to put all of my intelligence into the network. It's the only thing that's going to programmatically scale with the speed and agility and capability to match the application. If I'm always trying to nail up routes and suck traffic into a firewall and then manually scale these firewalls, I will forever be one step behind, which creates sprawl, it creates shadow IT, it creates loose governance, it creates security risk and problems. And in fact, in cloud, it's still not a perfect story for security. 36% of businesses surveyed by Gartner recently said they've had a breach. When they talk to the engineering and security staff of these organizations. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. A third of companies see lack of security readiness as a major obstacle to public cloud migration. So there's a massive opportunity to help customers through security achieve their goals more quickly and advance their consumption of clouds more quickly. So that is a big part of our mission at Aviatrix, is to make networking agile and distributed and scalable and programmatic in a way such that you could speak Terraform to our controller as a single language, and it will then understand all the different cloud constructs for you, and then allow you to scale very quickly. So again, the big goal is to allow you to get to cloud faster and make your applications more secure.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like, at a real high level, it's software, which has been a huge boom in just, allowing flexibility from the old hardware days. So you can take it wherever you want. You can scale it in ways that are totally different. It's sort of built to be cloud native from day one. So you're getting it's there for where you want to get to. And then, like you said, it gives you the visibility that you want, which sometimes you don't necessarily get out of some of the native tools from the cloud, because they build in a certain amount of visibility for them, but you lose some visibility. And then, like you said, it's interesting. It's I'm always impressed when the newer native networking technologies are built around APIs and automation and stuff that we didn't have really 10 years ago, where it was. You could do it, but it was a lot of work. And now it feels like, it's a first class citizen. It's a first consideration. So it's cool that you guys are, essentially it's all those things that we talked about for the last 20, 30 minutes about, hey, these are challenging. Those are challenging. This is a learning curve. This doesn't really work the way you want to. You guys fill in a whole bunch of those areas to make them not such a big leap for people. It's a much smoother path, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. Our goal again is to try to provide a cloud ops experience consistently across all of the clouds, such that we take the operational model of cloud and then kind of push that out to the edge. So Aviatrix isn't just about the cloud as well. It's also about extending cloud to the edge and how you want your on-prem vision to look. But we do believe that cloud ops is going to be the future. A lot of the data and discussions point to that. And so we, instead of bringing the on-prem logic into cloud, kind of square peg like, we're trying to embrace the opposite, which is let's give security professionals, IT professionals, a common language, ability to collaborate closely together, which is something they really need to do. And let's give them a more simple cloud operation model that they can kind of grasp more quickly and use more efficiently, and then push that model out.
Yeah, I like it. In the last couple minutes that we have, real quick, any sort of lessons learned or low hanging fruit that anybody's if anybody's looking into this space, just stuff to avoid, or the headline, the top 5 things you can do to make your cloud migration easier type of thing. Any immediate sort of tips and tricks you can pass on to people?
Oh yes, absolutely. So first is, for each CSP or your main CSP, whatever kind of business model you're pursuing, that you are involved in migrating your applications and workloads to, work through their documentation tree, use a search engine, whatever, to look for a landing zone planning document. For Azure, this would be the Cloud Adoption Framework and well-architected framework, CAF and WAF. There's a tremendous amount of good practice knowledge on how to step through the cloud landing zone planning in the right sequence. And there, Azure isn't alone here. All the major clouds have documentation of this caliber. It's just finding it and exercising it and mastering it that's difficult. But a lot of it is about a linear chronological way and a collaborative way of approaching cloud design, where instead of letting the application and that part of the business kind of lead the charge, you need tighter collaboration between IT and digital innovation, and also within IT between networking and security tools that allow them to speak the same language, so that we don't have pillars. So the first thing that should happen would be good business analysis and planning about how you want your workloads of consequence to go, how you will innovate with them on a kind of a whiteboard approach. Then get into your security review and design with respect to that. Then bring in network review and design to make sure network and security collaborate. And then finally reapproach your application and workload design with the findings and the blueprints that IT and security and network have provided. And so look for platforms that ease that whole process, that give people common tools, that alleviate differences between clouds, that allow for cloud operation and cloud ops to be more quickly consumed by IT.
Good stuff. Bryan, thank you so much for the time today. Learned a lot. Had a chance to kind of dig into the pros and cons and the mistakes that people make. And like I said, it's good to see not only that this is a big healthy part of our sort of ecosystem, but also that the evolution is there's paths for people to continue to do this quickly. So thank you so much for the time, folks. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. On behalf of Aaron and I want to thank Bryan for his time and his insight today. As always, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. We are, going to be continuing to have hopefully a great second half of the year. It's been a great first half of the year, the most listens we've had of all time. So thank you for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. Thanks for helping us grow the show. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.